Section 2 of The Arabian Nights Entertainments by Anonymous. The story told by the Christian merchant. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Sir, before I commence the recital of the story you have permitted me to relate, I beg leave to acquaint you that I have not the honour to be born in any part of your Majesty's empire. I am a stranger, born at Cairo in Egypt, a Copt by nation, and by religion a Christian. My father was a broker, and realized considerable property, which he left me at his death. I followed his example, and pursued the same employment. While I was standing in the public inn frequented by the corn merchants, there came up to me a handsome young man, well dressed and mounted on an ass. He saluted me, and pulling out a handkerchief, in which he had a sample of sesame or Turkey corn, asked me how much a bushel of such sesame would fetch. I examined the corn the young man showed me, and told him it was worth 100 dirhams of silver per bushel. "Pray," said he, "look out for some merchant to take it at that price, and come to me at the Victory Gate, where you will see a khan at a distance from the houses." So saying, he left me the sample, and I showed it to several merchants, who told me that they would take as much as I could spare at 110 dirhams per bushel, so that I reckoned on getting 10 dirhams per bushel for my commission. Full of the expectation of this profit, I went to the Victory Gate, where I found the young merchant expecting me, and he took me into his granary, which was full of sesame. He had then 150 bushels, which I measured out, and having carried them off upon asses, sold them for 5,000 dirhams of silver. "Out of this sum," said the young man, "there are 500 dirhams coming to you, at the rate of 10 dirhams per bushel. This I give you, and as for the rest, which pertains to me, take it out of the merchant's hands, and keep it till I call or send for it, for I have no occasion for it at present." I answered, it should be ready for him whenever he pleased to demand it, and so, kissing his hand, took leave of him, with a grateful sense of his generosity. A month passed before he came near me. Then he asked for the sum he had committed to my trust. I told him it was ready, and should be counted to him immediately. He was mounted on his ass, and I desired him to alight and do me the honour to eat a mouthful with me before he received his money. "No," said he, "I cannot alight at present. I have urgent business that obliges me to be at a place just by. But I will return this way, and then take the money which I desired you would have in readiness." This said, he disappeared, and I still expected his return, but it was a full month before I saw him again. "This young merchant," thought I, "has great confidence in me, leaving so great a sum in my hands without knowing me. Any other man would have been afraid I should have run away with it." To be short, he came again at the end of the 3rd month, and was still mounted on his ass, but more handsomely dressed than before. As soon as I saw the young man, I entreated him to alight, and asked him if he would not take his money. "There is no hurry," said he, with a pleasant easy air. "I know it is in good hands. I will come and take it when my other money is all gone. Adieu," continued he, "I will return towards the end of the week." With that he struck the ass, and soon disappeared. "Well," thought I, "he says he will see me towards the end of the week, but he may not perhaps return for a great while. I will make the most I can of his money, which may bring me much profit." As it happened, I was not deceived in my conjecture, for it was a full year before I saw my young merchant again. He then appeared as richly apparelled as before, but seemed to have something on his spirits. I asked him to do me the honour to walk into my house. "For this time," replied he, "I will, but on this condition, that you shall put yourself to no extraordinary charge on my account." "I will do just as you please," said I, "only do me the favour to alight and walk in." Accordingly he complied. I gave orders to have a repast prepared, and while this was doing, we entered into conversation. All things being ready, we sat down. I observed he took the first mouthful with his left hand, and not with the right. I was at a loss what to think of this. "Ever since I have known this young man," said I inwardly, "he has always appeared very polite. Is it possible he can do this out of contempt? What can be the reason he does not use his right hand?" After we had done eating, and everything was taken away, we sat upon a sofa, and I presented him with a lozenge by way of dainty. But still he took it with his left hand. I said to him, "Pardon, sir, the liberty I take in asking you what reason you have for not using your right hand. Perhaps you have some complaint in that hand." Instead of answering, he heaved a deep sigh, and pulling out his right arm, which he had hitherto kept under his vest, showed me, to my great astonishment, that it had been cut off. "Doubtless you were displeased," said he, "to see me feed myself with the left hand, but I leave you to judge whether it was in my power to do otherwise." "May one ask," said I, "by what mischance you lost your right hand?" Upon that he burst into tears, and after wiping his eyes, gave me the following relation: "You must know that I am a native of Bagdad, the son of a rich merchant, the most eminent in that city for rank and opulence. I had scarcely launched into the world, when, falling into the company of travellers, and hearing their wonderful accounts of Egypt, especially of Grand Cairo, I was interested by their discourse, and felt a strong desire to travel. But my father was then alive, and would not grant me permission. At length he died, and being then my own master, I resolved to take a journey to Cairo. I laid out a large sum of money in the purchase of several sorts of fine stuffs of Bagdad and Moussul, and departed. Arriving at Cairo, I went to the Khan, called the Khan of Mesrour, and there took lodgings, with a warehouse for my bales, which I had brought with me upon camels. This done, I retired to my chamber to rest after the fatigue of my journey, and gave some money to my servants, with orders to buy some provisions and dress them. After I had eaten, I went to view the castle, some mosques, the public squares, and the other most remarkable places. Next day I dressed myself, and ordered some of the finest and richest of my bales to be selected and carried by my slaves to the Circassian bazaar, whither I followed. I had no sooner made my appearance than I was surrounded with brokers and criers who had heard of my arrival. I gave patterns of my stuffs to several of the criers, who showed them all over the bazaar, but none of the merchants offered near so much as prime cost and carriage. This vexed me, and the criers, observing I was dissatisfied, said, "If you will take our advice, we will put you in a way to sell your goods without loss." The brokers and the criers having thus promised to put me in a way of losing nothing by my goods, I asked them what course they would have me pursue. "Divide your goods," said they, "among several merchants. They will sell them by retail, and twice a week, that is on Mondays and Thursdays, you may receive what money they may have taken. By this means, instead of losing, you will turn your goods to advantage, and the merchants will gain by you. In the meanwhile, you will have time to take your pleasure about the town, or go upon the Nile." I took their advice, and conducted them to my warehouse, from whence I brought all my goods to the bazaar, and there divided them among the merchants, whom they represented as most reputable and able to pay; and the merchants gave me a formal receipt before witnesses, stipulating that I should not be making any demands upon them for the first month. Having thus regulated my affairs, my mind was occupied with ordinary pleasures. I contracted acquaintance with divers persons of nearly the same age with myself, which made the time pass agreeably. After the first month had expired, I began to visit my merchants twice a week, taking with me a public officer to inspect their books of sale, and a banker to see that they paid me in good money, and to regulate the value of the several coins. Every pay day I had a good sum of money to carry home to my lodging at the Khan of Mesrour. I went on other days to pass the morning sometimes at one merchant's house, and sometimes at that of another. In short, I amused myself in conversing with them, and seeing what passed in the bazaar. One Monday, as I was sitting in a merchant's shop, whose name was Buddir ad Deen, a lady of quality, as might easily be perceived by her air, her apparel, and by a well-dressed slave attending her, came into the shop and sat down by me. Her external appearance, joined to a natural grace that shone in all her actions, prepossessed me in her favour, and inspired me with a desire to be better acquainted with her. I know not whether she observed that I took pleasure in gazing on her, and whether this attention on my part was not agreeable to her, but she let down the crape that hung over the muslin which covered her face, and gave me the opportunity of seeing her large black eyes, which perfectly charmed me. In fine, she inflamed my love to the height by the agreeable sound of her voice, her graceful carriage in saluting the merchant, and asking him how he did since she had seen him last. After conversing with him some time upon indifferent subjects, she gave him to understand that she wanted a particular kind of stuff with a gold ground; that she came to his shop as affording the best choice of any in all the bazaar; and that if he had any such as she asked for, he would oblige her in showing them. Buddir ad Deen produced several pieces, one of which she pitched upon, and he asked for it 1100 dirhams of silver. "I will," said she, "give you your price for it, but I have not money enough about me, so I hope you will give me credit till tomorrow, and in the meantime allow me to carry home the stuff. I shall not fail," added she, "to send you tomorrow the 1100 dirhams." "Madam," said Buddir ad Deen, "I would give you credit with all my heart if the stuff were mine, but it belongs to the young man you see here, and this is the day on which we settle our accounts." "Why," said the lady in surprise, "do you use me so? Am not I a customer to your shop? And when I have bought of you, and carried home the things without paying ready money for them, did I in any instance fail to send you your money next morning?" "Madam," said the merchant, "all this is true, but this very day I have occasion for the money." "There," said she, throwing the stuff to him, "take your stuff. I care not for you nor any of the merchants. You are all alike, you respect no one." As she spoke, she rose up in anger and walked out. When I saw that the lady walked away, I felt interested on her behalf, and called her back, saying, "Madam, do me the favour to return. Perhaps I can find a way to satisfy you both." She returned, saying it was on my account that she complied. "Buddir ad Deen," said I to the merchant, "what is the price you must have for this stuff that belongs to me?" "I must have," replied he, 1100 dirhams. I cannot take less." "Give it to the lady then," said I, "let her take it home with her. I allow 100 dirhams profit to yourself, and shall now write you a note, empowering you to deduct that sum upon the produce of the other goods you have of mine." In fine, I wrote, signed, and gave him the note, and then delivered the stuff to the lady. "Madam," said I, "you may take the stuff with you, and as for the money, you may either send it tomorrow or the next day, or, if you will, accept it as a present from me." "Pardon me," returned she, "I mean no such thing. You treat me with so much politeness, that I should be unworthy to appear in the world again, were I to omit making you my best acknowledgments. May God reward you by an increase of your fortune. May you live many years after I am dead. May the gate of paradise be open to you when you remove to the other world, and may all the city proclaim your generosity." These words inspired me with some assurance. "Madam," I replied, "I desire no other reward for the service I have done you than the happiness of seeing your face, which will repay me with interest." I had no sooner spoken than she turned towards me, took off her veil, and discovered to me a wonderful beauty. I became speechless with admiration. I could have gazed upon her for ever, but fearing any one should observe her, she quickly covered her face, and letting down the crape, took up the piece of stuff and went away, leaving me in a very different state of mind from that in which I had entered the shop. I continued for some time in great confusion and perplexity. Before I took leave of the merchant, I asked him if he knew the lady. "Yes," said he, "she is the daughter of an Emir." I went back to the khan of Mesrour and sat down to supper, but could not eat, neither could I shut my eyes all the night, which seemed the longest in my life. As soon as it was day, I arose, in hopes of once more beholding the object that disturbed my repose, and to engage her affection, I dressed myself much richer than I had done the day before. I had but just reached Buddir ad Deen's shop, when I saw the lady coming in more magnificent apparel than before, and attended by her slave. When she entered, she did not regard the merchant, but addressing herself to me, said, "Sir, you see I am punctual to my word. I am come for the express purpose of paying the sum you were so kind as to pass your word for yesterday, though you had no knowledge of me. Such uncommon generosity I shall never forget." "Madam," said I, "you had no occasion to be in such haste. I was well satisfied as to my money, and am sorry you should put yourself to so much trouble." "I had been very unjust," answered she, "if I had abused your generosity." With these words she put the money into my hand, and sat down by me. Having this opportunity of conversing with her, I determined to improve it, and mentioned to her the love I had for her. But she rose and left me very abruptly, as if she had been angry with the declaration I had made. I followed her with my eyes as long as she continued in sight, then taking leave of the merchant, walked out of the bazaar, without knowing where I went. I was musing on this adventure, when I felt somebody pulling me behind, and turning to see who it was, I was agreeably surprised to perceive it was the lady's slave. "My mistress," said she, "I mean the young lady you spoke to in the merchant's shop, wants to speak with you, if you please to give yourself the trouble to follow me." Accordingly I followed her, and found her mistress sitting waiting for me in a banker's shop. She made me sit down by her, and spoke to this purpose: "Do not be surprised that I left you so abruptly. I thought it not proper, before that merchant, to give a favourable answer to the discovery you made of your affection for me; but, to speak the truth, I was so far from being offended at it, that it gave me pleasure, and I account myself infinitely happy in having a man of your merit for my lover. I do not know what impression the first sight of me may have made on you, but I assure you I had no sooner beheld you than I found my heart moved with the tenderest emotions of love. Since yesterday I have done nothing but think of what you said to me, and my eagerness to seek you this morning may convince you of my regard." "Madam," I replied, transported with love and joy, "nothing can be more agreeable to me than this declaration. No passion can exceed that with which I love you. My eyes were dazzled with so many charms, that my heart yielded without resistance." "Let us not trifle away the time in needless discourse," said she, interrupting me. "Make no doubt of your sincerity, and you shall quickly be convinced of mine. Will you do me the honour to come to my residence? Or if you will, I will go to yours." "Madam," I returned, "I am a stranger lodged in a khan, which is not the proper place for the reception of a lady of your quality. It is more proper, madam, that I should visit you at your house. Have the goodness to tell me where it is.' The lady consented. 'Come,' said she, 'on Friday, which is the day after tomorrow, afternoon prayers, and ask for the house of Abbon Sharma, surnamed Bercour, late master of the Emirs. There you will find me.' This said, we parted, and I passed the next day in great impatience. On Friday I put on my richest apparel, and took 50 pieces of gold in my purse. I mounted an ass I had bespoken the day before, and set out, accompanied by the man who let me the ass. I directed the owner of the ass to inquire for the house I wanted. He found it, and conducted me thither. I paid him liberally, directing him to observe narrowly where he left me, and not to fail to return next morning with the ass, to carry me again to the Khan of Mesrour. I knocked at the door, and presently 2 little female slaves, white as snow and neatly dressed, came and opened it. 'Be pleased to come in, sir,' said they. 'Our mistress expects you impatiently. These 2 days she has talked of nothing but you.' I entered the court, and saw a pavilion raised 7 steps, and surrounded with iron rails that parted it from a very pleasant garden. Besides the trees, which only embellished the place, and formed an agreeable shade, there was an infinite number of others loaded with all sorts of fruit. I was charmed with the warbling of a great number of birds, that joined their notes to the murmurings of a fountain, in the middle of a parterre enamelled with flowers. This fountain formed a very agreeable object. 4 large gilded dragons at the angles of the basin, which was of a square form, spouted out water clearer than rock crystal. This delicious place gave me a charming idea of the conquest I had made. The 2 little slaves conducted me into a saloon magnificently furnished, and while one of them went to acquaint her mistress with my arrival, the other tarried with me, and pointed out to me the beauties of the hall. I did not wait long in the hall, ere the lady I loved appeared, adorned with pearls and diamonds; but the splendour of her eyes far outshone that of her jewels. Her shape, which was now not disguised by the habit she wore in the city, appeared the most slender and delicate. I need not mention with what joy we met once more. It far exceeded all expression. When the first compliments were over, we sat down upon a sofa, and there conversed together with the highest satisfaction. We had the most delicious refreshments served up to us, and after eating continued our conversation till night. We then had excellent wine brought up, and fruit adapted to promote drinking, and timed our cups to the sound of musical instruments joined to the voices of the slaves. The lady of the house sung herself, and by her songs raised my passion to the height. In short, I passed the night in full enjoyment. Next morning I slipped under the bolster of the bed the purse with the 50 pieces of gold I had brought with me, and took leave of the lady, who asked me when I would see her again. 'Madam,' said I give you my promise to return this night.' She seemed to be transported with my answer, and conducting me to the door, conjured me at parting to be mindful of my promise. The same man who had carried me thither waited for me with his ass, which I mounted, and went directly to the Khan, ordering the man to come to me again in the afternoon at a certain hour, to secure which I deferred paying him till that time came. As soon as I arrived at my lodging, my first care was to order my people to buy a lamb and several sorts of cakes, which I sent by a porter as a present to the lady. When that was done, I attended to my business till the owner of the ass arrived. I then went along with him to the lady's house, and was received by her with as much joy as before, and entertained with equal magnificence. Next morning I took leave, left her another purse with 50 pieces of gold, and returned to my khan. I continued to visit the lady every day, and to leave her every time a purse with 50 pieces of gold, till the merchants whom I employed to sell my goods, and whom I visited regularly twice a week, had paid me the whole amount of my goods, and, in short, I came at last to be moneyless, and hopeless of having any more. In this forlorn condition I walked out of my lodging, not knowing what course to take, and by chance went towards the castle, where there was a great crowd to witness a spectacle given by the Sultan of Egypt. As soon as I came up, I wedged in among the crowd, and by chance happened to stand by a horseman well mounted and handsomely clothed, who had upon the pommel of his saddle a bag half open, with a string of green silk hanging out of it. I clapped my hand to the bag, concluding the silk twist might be the string of a purse within. In the meantime a porter with a load of wood upon his back passed by on the other side of the horse, so near that the rider was forced to turn his head towards him to avoid being hurt or having his clothes torn by the wood. In that moment the devil tempted me. I took the string in one hand, and with the other pulled out the purse so dexterously that nobody perceived me. The purse was heavy, and I did not doubt but it contained gold or silver. As soon as the porter had passed, the horseman, who probably had some suspicion of what I had done while his head was turned, presently put his hand to his bag, and finding his purse was gone, gave me such a blow that he knocked me down. This violence shocked all who saw it. Some took hold of the horse's bridle to stop the gentleman, and asked him what reason he had to strike me, or how he came to treat a Mussulman so rudely. "Do not you trouble yourselves," said he briskly. "I had reason for what I did. This fellow is a thief." At these words I started up, and from my appearance everyone took my part, and cried out he was a liar, for that it was incredible a young man such as I was should be guilty of so base an action. But while they were holding his horse by the bridle to favour my escape, unfortunately passed by the judge, who, seeing such a crowd about the gentleman on horseback, came up and asked what the matter was. Everybody present reflected on the gentleman for treating me so unjustly upon the presence of robbery. The judge did not give ear to all that was said, but asked the cavalier if he suspected anybody else beside me. The cavalier told him he did not, and gave his reasons why he believed his suspicions not to be groundless. Upon this the judge ordered his followers to seize me, which they presently did, and finding the purse upon me, exposed it to the view of all the people. The disgrace was so great I could not bear it, and I swooned away. In the meantime the judge called for the purse. When the judge had got the purse in his hand, he asked the horseman if it was his, and how much money it contained. The cavalier knew it to be his own, and assured the judge he had put 20 sequins into it. Upon which the judge called me before him. "Come, young man," said he, "confess the truth. Was it you that took the gentleman's purse from him? Do not wait for the torture to extort confession." Then, with downcast eyes, thinking that if I denied the fact, they, having found the purse upon me, would convict me of a lie, to avoid a double punishment, I looked up and confessed my guilt. I had no sooner made the confession than the judge called people to witness it, and ordered my hand to be cut off. This sentence was immediately put in execution, to the great regret of all the spectators. Nay, I observed by the cavalier's countenance that he was moved with pity as much as the rest. The judge would likewise have ordered my foot to be cut off, but I begged the cavalier to intercede for my pardon, which he did, and obtained it. When the judge was gone, the cavalier came up to me, and holding out the purse, said, I see plainly that necessity drove you to an action so disgraceful and unworthy of such a young man as you appear. Here, take that fatal purse. I freely give it to you, and am heartily sorry for the misfortune you have undergone." Having thus spoken, he went away. Being very weak by loss of blood, some of the good people of the neighbourhood had the kindness to carry me into a house and give me a glass of cordial. They likewise dressed my arm, and wrapped up the dismembered hand in a cloth, which I carried away with me fastened to my girdle. Had I returned to the Khan of Mesrour in this melancholy condition, I should not have found there such relief as I wanted, and to offer to go to the young lady was running a great hazard, it being likely she would not look upon me after being informed of my disgrace. I resolved, however, to put her to the trial, and to tire out the crowd that followed me, I turned down several by streets, and at last arrived at the lady's house, very weak, and so much fatigued, that I presently threw myself down upon a sofa, keeping my right arm under my garment, for I took great care to conceal my misfortune. In the meantime the lady, hearing of my arrival, and that I was not well, came to me in haste, and seeing me pale and dejected, said, "My dear love, what is the matter with you?" "Madam," I replied, dissembling, "I have a violent pain in my head." The lady seemed to be much concerned, and asked me to sit down, for I had arisen to receive her. "Tell me," said she, "how your illness was occasioned. The last time I had the pleasure to see you, you were very well. There must be something that you conceal from me. Let me know what it is." I stood silent, and instead of an answer, tears trickled down my cheeks. "I cannot conceive," resumed she, "what it is that afflicts you. Have I unthinkingly given you any occasion of uneasiness, or do you come on purpose to tell me you no longer love me?" "It is not that, madam," said I, heaving a deep sigh. "Your unjust suspicion adds to my misfortune." I could not think of discovering to her the true cause. When night came, supper was brought, and she pressed me to eat; but considering I could only feed myself with my left hand, I begged to be excused upon the plea of having no appetite. "It will return," said she, "if you would but discover what you so obstinately conceal from me. Your want of appetite, without doubt, is only owing to your irresolution." "Alas, madam," returned I find I must resolve at last." I had no sooner spoken than she filled me a cup full of wine, and offering it to me, "Drink that," said she, "it will give you courage." I reached out my left hand, and took the cup. When I had taken the cup in my hand, I redoubled my tears and sighs. "Why do you sigh and weep so bitterly?" asked the lady, "and why do you take the cup with your left hand rather than your right?" "Ah, madam," I replied, "I beseech you excuse me. I have a swelling in my right hand." "Let me see that swelling," said she, "I will open it." I desired to be excused, alleging it was not ripe enough for such an operation, and drank off the cup, which was very large. The fumes of the wine, joined to my weakness and weariness, set me asleep, and I slept very soundly till morning. In the meantime the lady, curious to know what ailed my right hand, lifted up my garment that covered it, and saw to her great astonishment that it was cut off, and that I had brought it along with me wrapped up in a cloth. She presently apprehended what was my reason for declining a discovery, notwithstanding all her pressing solicitation, and passed the night in the greatest uneasiness on account of my disgrace, which she concluded had been occasioned only by the love I bore to her. When I awoke, I discerned by her countenance that she was extremely grieved. However, that she might not increase my uneasiness, she said not a word. She called for jelly broth of fowl, which she had ordered to be prepared, and made me eat and drink to recruit my strength. After that, I offered to take leave of her, but she declared I should not go out of her doors. 'Though you tell me nothing of the matter,' said she, 'I am persuaded I am the cause of the misfortune that has befallen you. The grief that I feel on that account will soon end my days, but before I die, I must execute a design for your benefit.' She had no sooner spoken than she called for a judge and witnesses, and ordered a writing to be drawn up, putting me in possession of her whole property. After this was done, and everybody dismissed, she opened a large trunk, where lay all the purses I had given her from the commencement of our amour. 'There they are all entire,' said she. 'I have not touched one of them. Here is the key. Take it, for all is yours.' After I had returned her thanks for her generosity and goodness, 'What I have done for you,' said she, 'is nothing. I shall not be satisfied unless I die, to show how much I love you.' I conjured her by all the powers of love to relinquish such a fatal resolution, but all my remonstrances were ineffectual. She was so afflicted to see me have but one hand, that she sickened and died after 5 or 6 weeks' illness. After mourning for her death as long as was decent, I took possession of all her property, a particular account of which she gave me before she died, and the corn you sold for me was part of it. 'What I have now told you,' said he, 'will plead my excuse for eating with my left hand. I am highly obliged to you for the trouble you have given yourself on my account. I can never sufficiently recompense your fidelity. Since I have still, thanks to God, a competent estate, notwithstanding I have spent a great deal, I beg you to accept of the sum now in your hand, as a present from me. I have besides a proposal to make to you. As I am obliged, on account of this fatal accident, to quit Cairo, I am resolved never to return to it again. If you choose to accompany me, we will trade together as equal partners, and share the profits.' I thanked the young man for the present he had made me, and I willingly embraced the proposal of travelling with him, assuring him that his interest should always be as dear to me as my own. We fixed a day for our departure, and accordingly entered upon our travels. We passed through Syria and Mesopotamia, travelled over Persia, and after stopping at several cities, came at last, sir, to your capital. Some time after our arrival here, the young man having formed a design of returning to Persia and settling there, we balanced our accounts and parted very good friends. He went from hence, and I, sir, continue here in your Majesty's service. This is the story I had to relate. Does not your Majesty find it more surprising than that of the hunchback buffoon?' The Sultan of Casgar fell into a passion against the Christian merchant. 'Thou art a presumptuous fellow,' said he, 'to tell me a story so little worth hearing, and then to compare it to that of my jester. Canst thou flatter thyself so far as to believe that the trifling adventures of a young debauchee are more interesting than those of my jester? I will have you all 4 impaled, to revenge his death.' Hearing this, the purveyor prostrated himself at the Sultan's feet. 'Sir,' said he, 'I humbly beseech your Majesty to suspend your wrath, and hear my story; and if it appears to be more extraordinary than that of your jester, to pardon us.' The Sultan having granted his request, the purveyor began thus: Section 2.